Hey, what is going on? Welcome to EST, the podcast for established church leaders by established church leaders. My name is Josh.
My name is Sam, and I hope everyone is doing well today.
I hope you're having a great day today. The weather's so nice. It is definitely sunroof weather. Or in your case, take the top off. And I'm talking about your Jeep.
Yeah, I'm a Jeep guy, and recently...
Leave your top on.
Yeah, there's a whole story behind that. I had a Land Cruiser, and I love Toyotas. I'm gonna tell this story now. I love Toyotas,
Right, tell the story.
But I'm first a Jeep guy, and I've driven all sorts of You're a Ford guy,
definitely Ford. But
Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm listening.
Yeah. So, I got a call from the Toyota dealership, and basically, I'd had this Land Cruiser for 3 years. I'd bought it used. They offered me more than what I paid for it 3 years ago, and so
Boom.
I traded it in and got me a Gladiator. So now I'm driving. It's a Rubicon. I'm very proud of it. It's got automatic sway bar disconnects, front and rear lockers. You know, I'm definitely I am going to use it as designed, and I'm very excited about it. Yes.
Yeah,
But you drive around in your pretty Ford F-150.
It's
You don't
beautiful.
get it dirty.
It has all those features, and I can do all that stuff. I just don't know what it is or how to do it. I know how to turn the seat warmers on, so I do that. But I don't know the rest of this stuff.
So your two co-hosts here are both truck guys, but very different kinds of truck guys. Mine's going to get scratches and dings and all that kind of stuff in it. And I'm gonna beat that thing to nothing.
Yeah, I do go off road, especially when I'm kayaking. We got to go off into riverbeds and stuff like that, and it can do it, and it can do it like a hoss. It's just I don't like it. And as soon as I get it home, wash and wax, get that thing back to pretty. So, all right, talk about our sponsors.
Yeah, we're just gonna take a hard right now, and
Ford and Jeep we're still waiting for them to email us back, but when they do,
you know what, I like Boyd Pelly better than either
nice guy.
of the. Now, of course, if Jeep wanted to sponsor the show, I'd take the phone call. Yeah, okay, let's talk. But what we have right now is a sponsor that really fits the needs of our listeners. So grateful to Church Teams for sponsoring the show. It's a church management software system, but it's more than that. You've got a company that's got a great team that cares deeply about the church. They love the local church. I know Boyd personally. He's been on the show. We'll be back on the show again in a few episodes. And I just know he's got a big heart for serving churches of all sizes. Their software is it's robust enough to serve very large churches, but his price points are good for the smaller churches. So that's one thing I love about Church Teams is you're getting an all-in program with membership, check-in, texting, online giving, scheduling, groups, everything. They do it all under one umbrella, and it starts, for churches under 200 people, these plans start at $37 a month. And I just think that it's an amazing product. So we're honored to have them sponsoring the show. You can go to est.church to get a free offer from Church Teams. So if you are in the market for church software, or even if you are just dissatisfied with your current church software, I would encourage you to go to est.church, fill out the form. Their team will contact you, and they would be glad to serve you. So thank you, Church Teams, for sponsoring the show. Go to est.church to get the offer.
Yeah, we've been talking lately about how our shows are now on YouTube and encouraging people to go do that. So that's why I'm going to tease this. Look at that. You got to go to YouTube and see a picture of my truck. It's so beautiful. But
yeah, I don't have a picture of my baby to show the world. I'll have to do that. I'll have to do that like on the next episode or something.
Next episode.
Now, is yours black? Because mine's black.
Mine's dark gray. Dark gray.
Okay.
Yeah. But you're talking about the one with the bed, the Gladiator. That's right.
Yeah. It's basically a Wrangler with a bed, but it's more than that. I mean,
cool.
That's how people describe it. It's a whole different
cool. Yeah.
It's a whole different frame.
All right.
It's a mid-sized truck. It's a mid-sized truck, and I love it. Awesome. Yeah, I can't go down this road, man, because our listeners don't tune in for truck talk.
They're like, get to it. All right, Here we go.
All right, so on the last episode, we talked about attendance frequency. So if you didn't hear that part of the conversation, people are coming to church less often. So to kind of rehash that a little bit, If you have a church of 400 people and they come 4 out of 4 weeks, you've got an average weekly attendance of 400. You take the same 400 people and they come every other week, which is about what they do now. Your average weekly attendance is 200. So your church
Mm-hmm.
is half the size. So you think, at least that's the way it looks on Sunday morning, but not in reality. And so you and I kind of brought this topic up in the last episode. We really want to talk at length about what's going on with attendance, and then this idea of counting people who show up. Should you even still be doing that? Is that the right thing? It is kind of weird if you think about it in terms of church history, that
Yep.
we're literally going to count everybody every week and we're going to report those numbers. I don't know that churches were doing that, and with the early church fathers,
Yeah.
head count everybody.
Yeah.
But I'll just come out and say it. I still think that you should count. I think that tracking your worship attendance and anyone that's on campus needs to be counted. So how do you count? That's important. Everyone is counted one time, including children, for all the weekend services. So if you have a choir and they sing in all 3 services, you don't count them in all 3 services. That's triple counting. If you have children you have children in both hours, you don't count the same child twice. You count everybody one time that's on campus. And we'll talk about video venue here in a moment. But so I think worship attendance is still worth tracking, and I still think that it is the metric of success. Yeah. I know some people will disagree that it needs to be the metric of success. I'm just reporting the facts. I think that it's a very important metric to track. I don't think it's the only church health metric that needs to stand out above all the others, but it does, and that's what people talk about.
Yeah, I don't think you should count. I think that got David in trouble, and so you're not allowed to count people. No, I'm kidding.
You count. I think you count at your church. I've seen your spreadsheets.
Oh, it's such a beautiful.
Stop
spreadsheet.
it.
No,
Stop it. I was trying if you listen to the last episode, stop it.
Stop it. I was trying to Bible juke you. Yeah. So I definitely think you should count. It's not a matter of ego, and that's where people want to shy away from. To me, it's a matter of health. And if you took your kid to the doctor and you asked the doctor, it's like, well, how much do they weigh? How much did they weigh last time? Is this good or is this bad? And they're like, oh, I don't know. That's superficial. I don't know. That's just your ego. And it's like, well, no, it matters. It matters a lot. Especially a newborn. So those kind
That's
of
a good analogy. That's a really good analogy. Like,
Thank you.
You're tracking your child's height just because you've got ego issues. Like,
oh yeah, no,
it's actually a pretty good gauge to figure out if they're on track or not.
Yeah,
that's really good. I'd never heard that before. Did you just make that up?
Straight up off the top of my head, man.
That's
what Ford drivers do. It's what Ford drivers.
I am stealing that.
All right. So here's the other thing. And I just thought about this while you were talking. I hope it's encouraging for you to hear. It's a thing that we need to work on, that people are attending less frequently, but it should be encouraging. Here's why. Let's say you're at a church and you took the church, 5 years ago, and you're like, I took the church, it was 100. 5 years later, it's 100. We got all these new faces. I don't understand. We didn't grow at all. Quite possibly you did. Quite possibly you doubled. It's just they're attending less frequency. That's why you look around and you say, but there's all these new people and we didn't lose very many of the old people. What's going on here? It's less frequency in attendance. Now, knowing that means that we need to kind of do some things to help grow that. But yeah, I'm a big fan of counting. Let me ask you this. When do you count? Do you count small groups? Do you count worship gathering? Like when they're coming in the sanctuary? Because that's what we're talking about. We talked about that.
So back in the day, and by back in the day, I mean the 60s and 70s,
Ooh.
Worship attendance was, people cared about it, but it wasn't as big a deal as Sunday school counts. And people would come to Sunday school and they wouldn't come to worship. Sunday school was the front door for worship 50, 60 years ago. So Sunday school counts were a big deal. In fact, there's books from the church growth era that like the largest Sunday schools and how they got there. And worship was just kind of a secondary feature. So we have flipped that around in today's world, really the last 30, 40 years, where worship attendance and getting people in worship was the front door. And now worship is the front door for groups. To your point about a bunch of new people, and yet we're the same attendance size, you also lose a little less than a third of your people every year to moving out of the community, death, transfer growth, and attendance frequency issues. You combine all four of those things together. The death rate's 1% roughly. That's a real rough figure. If you have a higher, if you have an older church, that's going to be higher. The mobility rate is roughly not 9%. That's a real rough figure. So 9% of your church are going to move out of the community in any given year. So if you are stagnating, if you're stalled, which is what we're talking about in today's episode, you're actually still gaining new people because, again, the average church is going to need to replace a third of its people every year just to stay the same.
Yeah.
So that's why people that leave for 4 or 5 years and come back, they'll say, wow, I don't know hardly anyone. This is a whole new church.
That's a good point. And it's something that we should tell, that maybe you might want to tell your deacons or maybe your board or whoever it is that you're making leadership decisions, because oftentimes people can get real discouraged because they're looking at that number, and you may be growing to stay steady. It just gives people a more full picture. It doesn't mean you stink as a leader or your church stinks just because you're staying at a plateaued rate. I would never say anybody stinks at a plateaued or a declining rate. That doesn't necessarily speak to anything about your value. It just is something to analyze, and it'll help other people understand.
Yeah, I mean, you inherit a church of 180-year-olds. Like, you've got quite a road in front of you.
Yeah, you got like 5 years. You better get.
Yeah, I know.
Going.
I mean, that's what I mean. Is you're doing a lot of funerals, and you've got no children's ministry. That's a tough gig. Even if the 80-year-olds are like, yes, please do whatever you need. We want our church to survive.
And I often find that they do.
Yeah. No, not really. There's a reason that, that church has been in decline for 20 years and it's all older people. Yeah, I hear you. Uh-huh. So let me say this. The median church size is down by half the last 20 years. So in the year 2000, the median church size, and again, median means half, the median church size, let me just say this. The median church size in 2000 was 137. Mm-hmm. So median means that half the churches had more than 137 and half the churches had less than 137. It's not average, even though a lot of times average and median end up being close to the same number. It is different. So the median church size in the year 2000, 137. The median church size in 2020, right before the pandemic, was 65.
Whoa.
So another reason why we're seeing the stalled attendance is just, if you're doing qualitative research, this would be a phenomenological study, as it's called. There is a phenomenon that is occurring across the board, all churches, of them just getting smaller. So this is a cultural issue or a phenomenological issue that is happening in the United States. So if that's your church, I mean, I'm not here to make you feel better, like, oh, we got 75, so we're better than everybody else. I mean, that's really not the point. I just think statistically what we're seeing is a culture that just doesn't come to church as much, and not as many people feel compelled to come to church. And church is not the thing. It's not the hub of the community. It's not where people come to get the gossip or talk or hang out or be entertained.
Yeah.
None of those things are good, by the way. But people used to come to church for impure motives, right? I mean, I want to get all the juicy news. So I'm going to go to church. That doesn't happen anymore. Now, that's probably healthy that people aren't coming to church for that reason, but that's yet another reason why attendance has stalled. And I say stalled again in the title of the podcast because, with COVID, I mean, everyone experienced this. We kind of had a little jolt back, like, okay, wow, our people are coming back, and we're right back to where we were in a lot of these trends, even pre-COVID. It's almost like we've settled into a new pattern that's even lower than where we were, in 2019.
Well, I brought up the idea of do you take attendance in small groups or in worship gathering? And I'm thinking that there's a difference in the count and attendance. So, we take a count for our worship gatherings. We have somebody stand in the back and they count heads, that kind of thing. But for small groups, we take attendance.
Thank you, Randy. He's the one who counts at West Braden. Does the same thing.
Yeah, we have a couple that do that. And so they like your attendance is different. That's your name. But we don't know who is going to worship gatherings. And I just brought that up as sort of a discussion. I've often been tempted to figure out a way to take attendance on worship gatherings because it really helps us kind of determine. It'd be helpful to me to figure out the discrepancy. Who are these people? Because I could tell that we run about 80% of our worship gatherings in small groups. Well, who are the 20%? Why? And like trying to figure that out, you know?
Yeah, well, your 20% are people that are either phasing into the church or phasing out.
No, I want 100%. No.
Well, you won't ever get 100%. You don't want, so let me be very clear. You don't want 100%. If that's your model, if worship's the front door, you don't ever want 100% of your people in groups because it means you're not getting any new people. Unless they just come to a group day one, which I guess is possible. But, that 80% is actually the target. I would say any higher, and you might be in danger of not gaining. You might be in a decline scenario. So that sweet spot ratio with groups to worship attendance is 80%, particularly if you have a lot of on-site groups. So we're always that's why you're 80%. You take them off-site, you'll go to 40%. These people that say home groups, and I get it. There's a lot of good to home groups, but it's a great
building
way
space.
It's a great way to kill. It's a great way to kill your group attendance. It's just take them all off. If you have them on site and you take them off site, it's a great way to kill it.
Oh yeah. Bad.
So I would say that's our target. We're not quite there yet, but about 80%. That's children and adults. Our kids groups numbers count too. They have their classes and then they go to their worship experience. A lot of them come into the big church experience too. But so I would just say part of the reason we're seeing stalled attendance is because we're not investing in groups like we used to. People who come to a group over time are 5 times more likely to be assimilated into the body, which means they come more often. People in groups, there's all sorts of studies on this. People in groups tend to give more, a lot more, significantly more. So anytime I see a church that has de-emphasized groups, again, however you want to do groups, I don't care. You can do traditional Sunday school. You can do home groups. There's some models that do help with attendance more, like Sunday school, but any group is better than no group, and a messy group is better than no group. So I would just say that part of what we're seeing is as groups were devalued, especially the last 2 years during, post-pandemic, that we've seen people who just don't come as often. You want to get people there more often, get them involved in a group.
Completely agree. And you're never going to hear me, I'll grow and change over time. But right now, I will argue with you that on-campus small groups is the model to go with. It is by far, it's got the least amount of weaknesses in my personal yet professional podcasting opinion. And that's just the way I'm going to roll with it.
The statistics would agree with you. So there's no way around it.
My experience.
Churches that thrive with on-campus groups are usually right around 80% to worship. Churches that thrive with home groups are usually right around 40% to worship.
Yeah, and I even make a distinction between on-campus Sunday school and on-campus small group. So I have this model. It's not unique. It's the way I think that it should go. And maybe we should do an episode on increasing your small group attendance. I've got a couple of ideas that would help there. But you're absolutely right. I think it also plays into this idea that when you're decreasing that, then you're going to have less, like you said, less giving, less participation, those sort of things. And so if I know that that's true, and it is true, and I know that people are attending less often, listen, I want to get as much as I can when I get them on campus. So if they're only going to be here twice, man, I want to get them in a small group and then in a worship service. We have the facilities to do that. So if you don't have the facilities and you're yelling at me right now, man, I'm sorry for you. And I hope you get that one day. But I try to get them all in there as much as I can and get as much. And what you see is their participation increases. So
can I put my tinfoil hat on for a moment?
Do.
So I've not confirmed this with anyone, and I would just be curious if any of our listeners could confirm it with the church. DM me, on Twitter. Don't put it out there publicly because I'm not really into bashing churches publicly.
Secret. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have heard And again, this is all like rank speculation. So I'm just going to spread gossip all over the airways right now. When it comes to counting, I've heard that there are some churches that use facial recognition software, but I can't, like Disney. You go to Disney, those little armbands that they give you and all that, that they used to track you wherever you go. But now they just use facial recognition everywhere. They'll deny that they do it, but that's what they're doing. So those magic bands really are magic because they know everything about you. I've heard that some churches are doing that. I can't confirm that. I would say ill-advised. Please don't do that. That's really creepy and wrong. And particularly if you're not telling people you're doing that, that's just very strange. So I'd just be curious if someone could actually confirm it, because I've heard these crazy rumors of like, yeah, they use facial recognition. Like, do they really? Or are you just saying that?
I've heard to see it. I'd love to see.
I've heard it.
Yeah, and I'm not totally against it. I would just have to see what the benefits are, and kind of I would tell people
I am
if I was
against
doing
it.
Really?
You should not. Yeah, you should.
I really don't understand everything about it, but man, whatever gets the attendance, counted.
You would be very accurate. It would be very, very accurate.
I don't know. There's this one guy that looks just like me.
Where was Bob on Sunday? Well, actually, he was on the third floor at 11:02. Is that what you really want to be able to tell? I don't want to know that stuff. I don't know.
It depends on if you're getting sued or not. So attendance. I did know a church that had a like kiosk when you walked in the door. They did home groups, but they had kiosk when you walked in the door, and you typed in your 4-digit phone number, the last 4 digits, checked all your family in. That was it. You didn't get a tag or a sticker or anything like that. Your kids got a sticker. You put that on their back. You sent them to KidMin. You walked into worship service, and that was something they used to hold people accountable. They said, "Hey, you're not going to worship service." So I thought that was cool.
Well. If you volunteer your information, that's one thing. We do check-in systems as well. We don't have kiosks for adult check-in, but we certainly do child check-in for child safety issues. Last thing, I think another reason why church attendance is stalling is people were counting a lot of video views as attendance, and those video views are way down, 90 to 99% down across the board. These churches, we gained 1,000 people last week when they were live streaming services for the first time, and we were a church of 200, now we're a church of 1,200, and guess what? All those views went away. So I don't know if to what degree churches are counting via video venue. I know some still do, because we have consulted some where they talk about it, and they'll add that factor. Well, 2.5 times we get 100 views, so there's probably 2.5 people watching that screen, so we're at 250. And I would just say, don't do that. If you want to count views online, great. There's nothing wrong with that. I would not include them in your metrics tracking as attendance. I think it's a separate metric that you can track that has a very different kind of fruit. So I would just say track it, but don't include it in your overall figure. I think that's misleading.
I agree. I completely agree. We track it. We keep track of it. There are 2 numbers. There's 2 totals with it, without it, that sort of stuff, how it affects. You got your in-person attendance, because look, part of the reason you need to know your in-person attendance is when the room is getting to 80% or 70% post-COVID, that sort of stuff. So you're going to need to know that. You need to know parking. You need to know a certain ratio of children's ministry if you're going to expand your buildings out, all that sort of stuff. And when it comes time to add parking, you can't start then. You need months of data, So I would say do all of that. The deal that I kind of really have a rub with is this. Per capita giving. So we cash, to put it crudely or basically, we cash online giving. And so if somebody's watching online, and we do have a number of these people who watch online and give via online, I'd rather them come into the room every week. I invite them to come back into the room, that sort of stuff. But I actually say don't count it for your attendance, but do count it in your per capita. What say you? If it's clean enough. I mean, those who were like, we gained 60. I know a church that said they had 60,000 new viewers and they lived in a town of 12,000. And I was like, you didn't have 60,000. But then your per capita is like half a cent each person, you know? What say you on that? Do you add it in or no?
No, we don't actually. I don't include any online views in any church metric system other than just counting it separately. So
Interesting.
no, it does not. Per capita giving is by definition those who are on site. So I think most of the listeners know my bias. I don't think there is such a thing as an internet church. I have a theological conviction that you
Yeah,
can't
I
do
don't call it a
church.
campus. Yeah.
Yeah, I just, and I understand those who do, and if they're sharing the gospel, great. I'm not really going to complain too much about it, but that's not my ecclesiology. I don't think you can have an internet church. I think you can have a digital ministry, and I think that's important, but not an internet church where that's the only way you do church. It's a very consumeristic model. So no, we don't include. We track our views. It's a couple hundred every week between Facebook and YouTube, maybe a little more. But it's not something that's really front and center. It's not something that we include in any other metric system.
Yeah. Yeah, we do not include it in, people say like, well, how many are coming to church? I had lunch with my DOM. That's our area kind of leader for us Southern Baptists. And we talk about who's coming to church, but I just say this is our in-person attendance, and then we have an online attendance, but I do count it in per capita giving. And our per capita has gone up steady even as we have started in counting online viewers, only because I also spend money that came in online too. So I think it's just online, in person. So I just divide them out that way. It's easier for me to understand. So,
well, there you go. Thank you everyone for tuning in to today's episode. Want to thank our sponsor, Church Answers University. This is an innovative new way of doing ministry education and training. It is affordable, it is accessible, and it is attainable. You can go to churchanswers.university and explore our certifications. Currently, we have two. We are expanding them. Got one in worship coming out soon enough, but we have a practical ministry track as well, certification in Christian ministry, as well as a certification in women's discipleship. Has been wildly popular. Several hundred students have come through, and we are thrilled to offer it to you. So go to churchanswers.university to look at the options that are available to you. Self-paced, all online, and monthly payment plans. Everything includes your books. The price that we give you is an all-in price, books included, everything you need to get your certification in Christian ministry or in women's discipleship. So go to churchanswers.university.
Yep. Highly encourage you to do that. Make it available to your church members as something that they may want to be involved in as well, the kind of thing that would take their discipleship to the next level. Thank you so much for listening and watching on YouTube. We hope that you will rate, review, give us a thumbs up, and let those in your social media circles know about EST. We will catch you next week.